Hi, everybody. My name is Keith Freeze, and today I'm going to be questioning if the Kings have their next core four already in their system. So, as you can see on the screen here, we have the previous core four of the LA Kings, that being Dustin Brown, Anze Kopitar, Drew Doughty, and Jonathan Quick. Now, what made this core four so special was two primary reasons. Number one, all of these guys were drafted by the Kings, homegrown, and other than Jonathan Quick leaving, they're all still LA Kings or retired as an LA King. And number two, the more kind of like important thing is that they covered all four positions on the ice. Brown being a winger, Kopitar being a center, Doughty as a defenseman, and Jonathan Quick as a goaltender. So not only did they have the core pieces involved, but this was kind of the building blocks in each position, and they solidified them. So I will just say that they had to earn these positions, of course. Nothing is ever given to a player. It's very easy to look at this and say, Brown, Kopitar, Doughty were all first-round picks, so they should be the building blocks. Well, like a first-round pick doesn't necessarily guarantee you that building block spot. Case in point, Dustin Brown was a 13th overall pick, and the following year, Lauri Tukkonen was taken 11th overall by the Kings, and he only played 5 games in the NHL, never recorded any points, and that was his length of time with the Kings. So I'm saying you have to earn it. Just draft stock alone does not guarantee you anything. So, but I do think that there are a couple guys that are in the system already that I think can fill some of these slots. So let me go and try and edit this real quick as we're doing this. So to start, I'm going to say that there is the next center in place. That being Quinton Byfield. So I do believe that Quinton Byfield is the next Anze Kopitar centerman building block for this next iteration of the core four. Again, nothing's guaranteed, but I do think that Byfield has proven in the short amount of time that we've seen him that his skill set is applicable to where the NHL is going and already is. And I don't think that he's out of place with that. In fact, I think he's going to be one of the guys in the near future that the NHL sees as a building block to brand or to build around, because he's very something special. Like there's something amazingly talented about that kid that, we as Kings fans, we are alarmed sometimes. And I think once the entire fan base of the NHL starts catching on it, some of just the amazing highlight reel stuff that he can do, he will most definitely be seen as our core building block down the middle. I also do think that, of course, there is the next building block on defense. Oh. Yes, Krant Blark, everybody. Krant Blark. No, I'm sorry. Brant Clark, of course, is the next building block, and I do think that Brant has, of course, some growing pains to do, but there's something about him that I think he's going to be one of those guys that attracts other defensemen to come play with the Kings. He's going to be a reason why other defensemen around the league go, you know what? I want to go there because that guy is something special and I want to be his partner, or I want to, be in the same ranks as that guy. And I also think that, we always hang up on the whole thing about, when Drew Doughty was first drafted, he was kind of more an offensive defenseman. And then as time went on, he became a two-way defenseman. And people were saying the same thing is probably going to be true of Clark. It very well could be. But I don't want him to go away from being an offensive defenseman in his career. Like, that's what makes him special. I think, you can only have one offensive defenseman on your team. That's just my opinion. I think it has to be something special. And Brant Clark as an offensive defenseman is incredibly special. Like, that is just he's so good in that role that I can't imagine him taking on being a two-way or even just a solid defensive, like he's going to have to play defense. That's not the point. The point is that he is an offensive defenseman and he can't lose that edge in his game because that's what makes him special. If they were just trying to turn him into a two-way defenseman, they should have just drafted a two-way defenseman because that's not his game. That's not what makes him great. What makes him great is the things that he can do with the puck on his stick, and I do think that he is the next building block that the Kings have. Now, I'm going to fill in another one here. And I'm going to go with Carter George. Carter George, the thing that impressed me a lot recently with the LA Kings in terms of how they chose to feature George was they didn't put him in for a full game. They asked him to come in relief twice. And that's not easy for a goaltender just to come in cold like that, but especially coming in cold in the third period. But he was so good in that role that, to me, I think that he is already showing a certain level of maturity at such a young age. And, you can get into the technical aspects of, being a good goaltender and all that. And, I'm sure that there's goaltending coaches or people out there that would probably, critique his style or whatever. But I personally just think that he was just such this calming influence already. And that's hard to do for a goaltender, whether they're 30 or 20 or whatever. But just Carter, he just came in and he played so well, and it just seemed so natural for him to just step in. And I know that there's, Hampton Slakinski in the system, and, I would even throw in Portillo, even though that wouldn't fit the criteria of like the homegrown part of this core four idea. But just out of all the guys that are in the system right now, I really think that Carter George is going to end up being the next great LA Kings goaltender. And the thing that kind of helps him in that way too, and I'm not saying this is a slight against Slakinski, but by the time Slakinski finishes his NCAA time, Carter George could already be in Ontario. Like, that's the reality here. So Carter George might already be playing professional hockey before Slakinski does. And Carter George is younger than Slakinski, and you would think that in the long run of things, that him having that professional career and having those opportunities before Slakinski does, that, especially given that he's a little younger, might in turn help his stock with the team in terms of sticking around longer. Now, keep in mind that, again, I did say earlier that sometimes it's not about your draft stock. It's sometimes about, sometimes it's just about, the right opportunity, the right timing. I'm sorry. I tried to fix these blinds on my face and it's not really working. Okay. But anyway, sometimes it is about the draft stock. Sometimes you live up to that. But keep in mind, too, that Jonathan Bernier was supposed to be the next great LA King, and he was a first-round pick, like a top 10 pick, if I remember right. And Jonathan Quick was a third-round guy, and Jonathan Quick beat him out. And it's very possible that Hampton Slakinski, who was drafted later than George, could beat out George. It's not a science that can be proven constantly. Drafting is just what it is. It's drafting. So you kind of have to take your picks. But I would say out of all the goaltenders that they currently have in their system, I'm going to give this nod to Carter George. So that leaves me with the winger spot in terms of who the next core four would be. Now, if you go back from Dustin Brown through Drew Doughty, Dustin Brown of this core four was the first drafted, and that was in 2003. Drew Doughty was the last one drafted of the core four in 2008, and that was over a 6 draft period. So 2003 to 2008 is 6 drafts. I know it doesn't seem like that immediately. When you think like 3 and 8, you might think 5, but no, it's 6 drafts. And so if I'm using Quentin Byfield as the measuring stick here, he was drafted in 2020. Well, we had 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24, and then now coming this next summer would be 2025. And Clark was drafted in 2021. Carter George is drafted in 2024. So those 3 guys would all be in that 5-year window, meaning that we can either look at it 2 ways. Number one, we can say that it's somebody else that's already been drafted in the system currently that could be that extra winger. We could even go back 1 year before Byfield to Turcotte in 2019 if he's the other member of this core four, and then that would be the end of this core four draft window because it would be 2019 to 2004. So it just depends on who you think. Now, the Kings did recently draft Liam Greentree, and here's my opinion. I think that what the Kings need for Quentin Byfield to be truly successful is the same kind of winger that Dustin Brown was, and I don't mean a player like Dustin Brown. I'm going to elaborate a little bit. But what I mean is that Quentin Byfield is a guy that drives the play with the puck on his stick, and him being a left shot forward, he needs to bounce the puck off of somebody to his right wing, because if he's shooting left, his natural forehand is to go to the right, and he needs somebody at his right wing that's preferably a right shot guy that can just take the puck, cradle on his stick. So forehand to forehand. And then that hopefully that winger can send it back to the middle for Byfield or for the guy playing at left wing. And so that's why I do think that Byfield would benefit mostly from having a right shot right winger as the fourth winger, as the fourth member of this core four. So is that guy currently in their system? The only guy that I can think of that is currently being billed as a top line guy right now that has a right shot and is technically a right winger, even though they're playing him at left wing, would be Alex Laferriere. So you could plug in Laferriere there. Again, if we're talking about, just draft stock and that kind of elevated level of talent, I would say it's Turcotte, even though he's a left shot forward. Because his playmaking on the outside is phenomenal. But it would almost be, I'll put it this way, it'd almost be a guarantee for me that it was Turcotte if Byfield was a right shot center. If Byfield was shooting right, that means that on his forehand, he'd be passing to the left, and you could put Turcotte at left wing because he's a left shot. Or if Turcotte was a right shot and Byfield was still a lefty. So the point is I think you need somebody like that. Now, I did mention Liam Greentree, and Liam Greentree is a left shot, but he plays at right wing. So maybe that's something else to consider. I don't know. The Kings right now like to shoot from the middle, and I get all that. I actually like when a sniper shoots from the middle, but I think that you have to have a playmaking winger in today's NHL, and that's more beneficial when that guy is making passes from his forehand, not his backhand. And it's better when he's receiving a pass from the forehand rather than a backhand. So do I think that the Kings currently have that last open spot? They could. They very well could. They could have that last guy in their system already. I would make the suggestion that if the Kings are looking for that right shot, right wing, high level of skill, high energy guy, there's a handful of options at the top of next year's draft. Martone, I guess, is like the number one guy. Eklund is somebody that you could talk about. Carbonneau would be another one. McQueen, I guess. And so you could really go through that list. Um, who's the other guy? Like Ease Weichsman or something like that, I think is his name. Um, I'll have to add it. I'll add it down in the description of the video because I don't want to like waste time. But they do have options. They have options for this upcoming draft if that's something that they really consider wanting to do. If they don't think that that guy is in their system yet, then they can go do that. But I would say, is the core four locked in at this point? No. Do I think that the core four is there though? Yes. Thank you for tuning into this video. My name is Keith Fries. As always, go Kings go, and thank you for tuning in.